Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to G Bear's Off-Grid Ways, a homestead in the desert. And I finally got to go outside today. Got up to whole 53 degrees. Can you imagine that? Wow. Well, yesterday was cold. It was in the 30s with the wind blowing, and it felt like it was in the teens. And the day before was the same thing. Just amazing. But now we're going into the warm-up. So I ventured outside and didn't get much done, but I did go to town and pick up my mail today. That piece of wire I had isn't going to be long enough to go across this whole wall. It just goes just past that post. So that one I might just cut it right down the middle and put it underneath this planter bed over here, so I can get this one planter bed at least closed up and start filling it in. And nothing can tunnel up from underneath that way. We'll see. Maybe I could do that one or this one of the two. But I got up this morning to a balmy, I mean really hot and balmy, 20 degrees. 20 degrees. Imagine that. I did crank up the thermostat by a half notch before bed last night, so it stayed 70 in the cabin. So I didn't notice it, but I did notice that got our buds here on this apple tree are doing just fine, and everything in here survived. It looks like got something spouting out of the top of that one right there. Everything's alive in here. It survived, and I didn't even have to light my tiki torches, but it was just a one-night thing, so it didn't really hurt anything too badly. So I came through here and checked everything, and everything in here looks good too. My broccoli didn't get hurt. My fava bean didn't get hurt. None of my herbs got hurt. My garlic is fine. My spinach, radishes, and kale are fine. I did notice that I pointed out once before I had one asparagus spear. And then over there, I went over and checked over there. I got three of them over there. I got one on that plant and two on that plant. So pretty interesting. This is only second year. Normally you don't get anything in the asparagus for 3 years. So kind of like tomatoes, when you plant a tomato, like I had tomatoes planted here last year, so I can't plant them here for another 2 years, or 3 years actually, this year and 2 more years after that, because the tomatoes take all of the nutrients out of the soil. And if you plant tomatoes over and over again in the same soil, in the same part of your garden, the insects know that they're there, so they tunnel underneath, get in the soil, and they stay in the soil and wait for the next planting. They'll eat up your plants too if you don't wait the 3 years in between rotating your crop. Now your cabbage isn't that way. This is like ever since I put this garden in, I've had cabbage right there, and those are still the same plants. And every year I get a couple of heads of cabbage out of those. I don't know if they're going to be ready before St. Patrick's Day, but who knows? And of course I've got this one still wrapped, and my mushrooms are all gone to wherever they go when they die. But oh, excuse me. That's another thing about remember, it looks like I got tomato coming up there and maybe there too. I might have to dig those out of there, because I did have tomato planted here last year, and I don't want to get tomato growing in the same area again, but I can pull those out. I remember the fertilizing of tomatoes is very important. You got the fertilizer has 3 numbers on it when you buy fertilizer, and those represent N, P, and K. Okay, so the N, P, and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and what's the other one? Potassium. Okay. All right. I knew you knew it. And anyway, those 3 numbers, the higher the number, the more of that part of the fertilizer is in the mix of that fertilizer. So for tomatoes, they only need a decent amount of nitrogen to get started growing. If you put too much nitrogen to them, if you use a very high first number all the time and a lower second and third number, then what you're going to do is grow a lot of green plant, but you're not going to get a good production of fruit on it. Once the plant starts growing, you really don't need that much nitrogen anymore, but the plant still uses it, so you got to keep adding it. But then the phosphorus is important for the second stage. That's what starts your flowering, and then your potassium is what sets your fruit and gets your fruit growing. So when you start off your tomatoes, you want to give them a good fertile soil to go into, not when they're little baby plants. When they're little baby plants, they don't need anything but water and something to hold them up. So you can start them in sand, just plain old washed sand. And when you get up to the second and third leaves, then you transplant them into something that's got a little bit of nutrient in them. There's all little secrets like that of growing tomatoes. And the other thing is, when you're putting them in the ground, is you want to add stuff to the hole. Dig the hole like 3 times larger than what you need. You want to bury the tomato plant. 2/3 of the plant that you have needs to go underground. Pluck off any extra leaves you don't need that are going to be below ground. The little hairs that are on the stems of the tomatoes will all turn into roots if you put those below the soil. Okay, so in the hole, you want to put things like coffee grounds, worm castings, things. There's a few different items. My mind doesn't work right now because I just heard somebody yell in the background, and I don't know where it's coming from. But anyway, there's a few things that you want to put into the hole, and bury that plant 2/3 deep. Don't cheat on that. Trust me. The more rootstock you got underneath the ground for a tomato plant, the better your production is going to be when it comes time to stop putting fruit on that thing. You can get up to 30 pounds of tomatoes off of one plant. So you don't have to plant a whole bunch of tomato plants. And we're talking on an average of a 1 pound tomato. You'll get 30 of those off of one plant. That's a lot of tomatoes. You're going to grow more than 1 or 2 plants, or 3 or 4 plants, or something like that. If you're going to have a whole bed like this of tomato plants, then you're going to be constantly feeding them, for one. You got to keep that fertilizer going to keep them happy. And you got to check on them almost every day. Keep them watered. You don't want irregular watering. You want just keep the ground moist. Not soaking wet and not dry, but moist. They like that type of soil. And then you got to add your fertilizer, maybe once a week or so through the main growing season. And you'll get a lot of good tomatoes off of it. So, oh yeah, the other thing when I brain pooped there a minute ago was worm castings you want to put in there. So, and eggshell. You take your eggshell and put them in a blender and grind them up, and put a few tablespoons, even a 1/4 cup of those down in the hole. And as they break down, they'll feed the calcium to the tomato plant that it needs. Keep it real happy. All right. So anyway, we'll get into that further down the line. Just wanted to show you this and what was going on. And I ventured out today because it was actually warm enough to go outside with a hoodie on. In the last couple of days, every time I went outside, my hands froze, my body was shivering, and when I got inside, it took 10-15 minutes for the warmth to come back into my body. Got plenty of electricity. Matter of fact, the batteries were on boost a little while ago when I was in here. Let's see where we're at now. Okay, well, the dump load had turned on because it had so much power in here, but we're still at 13.9 in here. So yeah, there's plenty of power. I'm not worried about power at all, and the winds aren't blowing today, so there's nothing being produced by the winds. But old Clem over here had blown over with his head stuck through that side over there. It looked like he was barfing from drinking too much. Anyway, another thing I did while I was stuck inside, my tamper here, the handle had dried out and shrunk so bad that there was an 1/8 inch gap all the way around it where it went into the metal part. So I came up with this idea. I took the base, the handle out of the base. I took the base inside and I put it on top of my stove and turned the flame on underneath it to start heating it up and get it hot. Now, I don't mean getting it red hot, but I mean getting it hot enough so that if you touched a candle to it, it would melt the candle. Well, then I got my hot glue gun and I coated the whole outside of the handle all the way around, and on the bottom I put a big glob of it on the bottom of it. And then while this thing was still hot, I shoved it down inside of there. Then I used my pot holders to pick it up, bring it over to the sink, and started cooling it down with water. And that's the hot glue right there that has solidified in there, and there ain't no more rattle or slippage on that thing. So I might do that to my picks and that other stuff. Is the dry air out here in the desert shrinks all the handles. All right, everybody, that's all I really have for today. Tomcat's out doing his thing, or he's inside. I did give him a little bit of catnip, so he's probably sleeping that off. All right, everybody, thanks for joining me. Don't forget your thumbs up down there, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh yeah, the People's Convoy came through here yesterday. They left the city of Adelanto south of here, and they came up the highway here going towards Vegas. I tried watching on the news to see if there was anything on the news about it. They really didn't do much for coverage on it. Really, really poor coverage, because I'm telling you, there had to be like 3,000 cars and trucks, all with their flags and stuff, and kind of makes you wonder why the media isn't covering that. Well, anyway, you can go on the internet and just look it up and see the Freedom Convoy that's heading to DC, and check them out. All right, everybody, thanks for joining me. This is G Bear signing off.